Greetings, mortals, and welcome back to another episode of Tapes of the Lost. Some ghosts whisper, others scream, and a few grab your throat in the dark. Tonight, we venture deep into the south, where the ghosts don't wait to be seen. They slam doors, scratch flesh, leave bite marks, and speak in voices that were never human.
Alabama is no stranger to haunted houses, but the one locals call the Tallman House is something else. You won't find it on ghost tours. No welcome signs, no placards, just an aging rental tucked off a rural highway, now avoided, overgrown, and utterly silent. It started like this. In the late 1980s, a young couple rented the property. They were new to the area, drawn by the cheap price and country peace. 2 bedrooms, front porch, quiet neighbors. It didn't stay quiet for long. The first night, they heard it, scratching in the walls. Animal sounds, maybe, but the walls were solid, no gaps. The sound didn't travel, it moved. A week later, the wife woke to find her husband standing in the hallway, eyes open, silent, his hands around his own neck, not choking himself, holding still like he was being held. He had no memory of it the next morning, just the bruises. They tried to explain it, sleep paralysis, stress, but the bruises darkened, spread. Soon he was waking with scratches too, 3 lines down his back, always 3. They asked the landlord if someone had died in the house. The landlord paused. "Not recently," he said. That's when the voices started. Low murmurs coming from the corners, a language they didn't know, throaty, old, angry. Sometimes it came from under the bed, sometimes from inside the closet. Once, during a thunderstorm, it came from the sink drain. The couple invited friends over, just for a night, to prove they weren't crazy. One friend left mid-dinner, ran out the front door and drove away. Later, she confessed she'd seen something upstairs, a shape standing motionless behind the glass of the bathroom mirror. The longer they stayed, the more the house reacted. Doors didn't just slam, they locked. One night, the wife was trapped in the bedroom as her husband screamed for help from the hallway. When she finally forced it open, he was on the floor, gasping, clawing at his throat again. But this time, he wasn't alone. She described it later as a shadow with weight. It wasn't just darkness. It bent the air. It left heat in its wake. And worst of all, it looked at her. They brought in a local pastor. He agreed to bless the house. Halfway through his prayer, the crucifix on the living room wall cracked in half. He left before finishing. Then came the dreams. Identical, repeated dreams, where both the husband and wife saw the same figure. A tall woman, pale skin, black veil. She stood at the foot of their bed and whispered something unintelligible but full of hate. In the dream, the air was thick. Breathing was hard. And always, just before waking, she would open her mouth wide, revealing rows of teeth. That's when the neighbors spoke up. The house had a history. The previous tenants, a different couple, had also fled. One left in the night. The other was later found living in a motel across the state line, diagnosed with severe dissociative amnesia. He never remembered why he left, but he wouldn't go near anything made of wood. "The trees talk in that house," he said, "and they know your name." The final days in the Tallman house broke them. The couple began sleeping in shifts. One stayed awake while the other rested, listening for voices, watching for movement. The longer they stayed, the more the entity escalated. The husband was dragged out of bed one night. Not fell, dragged. down the hallway, shirt torn, arms scraped raw. He said it felt like claws wrapped around his ankles. The wife tried to intervene but couldn't move. She was paralyzed, her eyes wide open, locked on the ceiling, where a shape twisted like smoke above her bed. And then came the burning smell. They thought the house was on fire. But there was no smoke, just that acrid, oily scent filling every room. And it came from the vents. They ran, left everything behind, clothes, furniture, even their pets. They never went back. 2 months later, another tenant moved in, a single mother and her teenage son. They lasted 6 nights. The son stopped speaking entirely after the third. When asked what he saw, he only wrote one word on the wall in crayon: her. The Tallman house was eventually boarded up. But even now, those who live nearby report strange things. Lights flickering in the windows, dogs howling at the empty porch, and once, a voice coming from inside, a language no one speaks, but everyone understands. Get out. Adams, Tennessee, 1817. In a modest cabin along the Red River, the Bell family began to hear sounds, tapping, gnawing, footsteps that circled the house but left no prints. At first, they thought it was animals. Then came the whispers. They weren't inside their heads. They were inside the walls. Voices began to echo from the dark corners of rooms. And then it spoke a name. Betsy, Betsy Bell, the family's youngest daughter, became the target. She was slapped, pinched, her hair pulled violently during the night. Witnesses outside the family came, and they heard it too. A voice, rough, female and mocking, loud enough to hold conversations, intelligent enough to quote scripture. And then the voice began to say something else. It wanted John Bell, the family's father, dead. The entity soon took on a name, Kate. It introduced itself to visitors, spoke with multiple voices, sang hymns, even recited 2 different sermons simultaneously from 2 churches miles apart. Neighbors tried to help, ministers came, but the spirit mocked them, mimicked their prayers, and once shouted over a sermon with shrill laughter that shook the walls. And always it returned to Betsy. Betsy was tormented, pushed, slapped so hard she bore handprints on her face. She collapsed during school lessons. Once she woke with her tongue blackened, as if burned. The family considered sending her away, but Kate said through the walls, "If she goes, I go." Meanwhile, John Bell was weakening. He began losing muscle control, tremors, difficulty swallowing. He heard the voice even when others didn't. It called him Old Jack, laughed when he coughed, sang lullabies at night, badly. By 1820, John was bedridden, and then he died. His family found a strange vial in the cupboard, dark liquid, unknown origin. The voice laughed again. I gave him that. To prove it, the spirit dared them to give the substance to the family cat. They did. The cat died instantly. After John Bell's death, the activity slowed, but never stopped. The voice promised to return in 7 years, and in 1828, it did. John Bell Jr., the eldest son, reported new conversations with the entity. He claimed it discussed philosophy, war, and even predicted the Civil War nearly 4 decades before it began. And then, just as suddenly, it vanished. But the story never died. In the 1800s, travelers came from as far as New Orleans to see the Bell property. Skeptics arrived and left shaken. Some never spoke of what they heard. Even President Andrew Jackson visited the site. After one night of unexplained knocking, voices, and a phantom slap that sent a soldier fleeing the property, Jackson left, saying, I'd rather fight the British again than face the Bell Witch. To this day, the Bell Witch Cave remains open to tourists. Visitors report feeling watched. Some say they hear the voice. Others claim to see a woman in white gliding silently toward the river. But the legend of Kate isn't just a haunting. It's something older, something personal, an entity that could choose who it hated and make them suffer. And perhaps worst of all, it talked. Not like a ghost, but like something that knew you. St. Francisville, Louisiana. A place soaked in history, moss, and blood. The Myrtles Plantation is one of the most famously haunted homes in America. But it's not famous for shadows or chill. It's famous for what it does to your body. Scratches, bites, fainting spells, and stories of possession. It began with a legend. A slave named Chloe, caught eavesdropping, had her ear cut off. In revenge, she poisoned her owner's family. But Chloe was caught and hanged. They say her spirit never left, and neither did the others. Guests have collapsed cold in the entryway. Tourists leave with bruises they didn't have before, and psychics refuse to return a second time. Because whatever lives here still reaches out. The plantation sits atop old ground, land once sacred, then soaked in blood. During the Civil War, soldiers were treated and died inside the house. Some say their spirits linger. Others claim they never moved on because of the house itself, because of what it feeds on. Visitors report sudden nausea, hallucinations. One woman fainted during a daytime tour and woke up screaming, claiming, "He's still in the mirror." She had no idea that upstairs, a mirror is said to trap spirits. Handprints often appear on the glass, small, child-sized. That mirror once belonged to the Woodruff family. Sarah Woodruff and 2 of her children died mysteriously in the 1800s. Their spirits are believed to be caught behind the glass, never laid to rest. And then there's room 8. Staff won't enter it alone. People hear breathing behind their ears, beds shake, and guests often leave in the middle of the night, refund be damned. One man woke up with a perfect bite mark on his back, human, but distorted, as if the teeth didn't quite line up. Medical examiners confirmed, not a prank, not a hoax. Something left that mark, and something watched as it did. One night, a visiting paranormal team set up equipment in the dining room. Cameras, EVP recorders, motion sensors, all standard gear. What they caught wasn't standard. Midway through the session, the lead investigator slumped forward, unconscious. When he woke, he was disoriented, claiming someone had been inside his head. He said it wasn't a voice, but a pressure. Thoughts that weren't his. His recorder picked up a whisper, low, guttural. It said, "She's mine now." But the room had been empty. Psychics who visit Myrtles don't stay long. They all mention the same energy, fractured, violent, restless. As if the plantation doesn't just contain spirits, it amplifies them. And the more people enter, the more it feeds. To this day, guests arrive excited, curious, skeptical, and many leave scratched. One woman was photographed in the front hall, alone. When the image was developed, a second figure stood behind her. No face, no limbs, just a black dress and a hand on her shoulder. She never returned. The house stands still, pristine, but its history pulses through every wallboard. And if you ask anyone who's worked there long enough, they'll tell you the same thing. It's not about belief. It's about what happens after you leave. Most ghost stories end with a chill, a whisper, a feeling that maybe you imagined it. Not these. The Tallman house choked its tenants, dragged bodies down hallways, spoke in voices older than language. The Bell Witch spoke, loudly, clearly, and with fury. It struck children. It may have killed a man, and it terrified a president. And myrtles? They wait to eat your heart. These hauntings don't wait for your permission. They don't care if you believe. They scratch. They push. They whisper names you haven't told anyone. In the South, ghosts aren't memories. They're power, rooted in land, fed by blood, woven into the air like humidity. And sometimes, rarely, they reach far enough to touch you. The people in these stories didn't go looking for ghosts. They rented a house, tried to raise a daughter, took a tour, and what they found wasn't fiction. It was force. So what do we do with places like these? Do we avoid them? Or does part of us want to feel that proof? The bruises, the bites, the breath on your neck in a locked room. Because if something can reach through, then we're not alone. And if we're not alone, what else is out there?
Child slaves swinging from trees, demons watching in the ferns. The South will always be a place of demonic and paranormal activity. This has been Into the Woods. If you made it to the end without a scratch, you got lucky. See you next time, mortals.